Thank you very much, Adnan. Thank you, James, Restore Justice, the Elevator Center, for your advocacy from the very beginning of the pandemic, looking out for both the incarcerated and the people who work behind these walls to make sure that they're safe. I began pursuing a plan for every prison facility in the state in April. I felt like I was late at that time. And I approached CDCR and I said, we need to have a plan. COVID-19 is not going to be an easy fight. Let's start planning for each prison now. And it is so unfortunate that they didn't listen to that call for action. It is so painfully unfortunate. We've seen what has happened since then. Nothing less than the worst prison health screw-up in state history, where a series of decisions by people in the receiver's office and CDCR led to the transfer of COVID-19 positive prisoners to San Quentin, lighting off a spark that has set San Quentin State Prison on fire, and that fire has not been put out yet. There must be accountability. There must. This is not acceptable in the state of California to treat the people in our care, the people in our custody, human beings, so cavalierly, so carelessly, with such destruction to their health and their lives. People have lost their lives because of these decisions by people who are still in their jobs. This has to end. There must be accountability for this. I want to renew my call. I called a couple of weeks ago for Judge Tiger, who's paid a lot of attention to this and has used forceful words, has been extraordinarily descriptive and forceful as well to make sure that testing is taking place, which should have been taking place anyway. But renew my call to replace the federal receiver. The federal receiver has a name, Clark Kelso. He can't hide behind this weird name, federal receiver. It's an actual human that was put in that job by a federal judge in 2008. He's not the first, and he should not be the last receiver. We must replace this receiver. A receiver has been replaced before. We must replace this one as well. Clark Kelso must go. What we have seen is that Kelso has rearranged chairs on the deck of his Titanic. He's actually moved people from one job to another as though he's replacing staff, but they're still on payroll. We're still paying them. They need to go. There are people that can do this job better. I want to also make sure that we really hear the need to reduce the prison population. Governor Newsom, release prisoners now. I also want to say we must sustain our attention here at San Quentin and at every facility where people are sentenced for time and locked up across the state of California. We can't say that they're building an alternative care site at San Quentin, so we're done. We can't say that they put up tents or they're trying to covert people more effectively, so we're finished. Not just here at San Quentin, but across the state. We need to sustain this attention because, unfortunately, COVID-19 is not going away. So we can't let our guard down, and that is one of the reasons why reducing the prison population is so important again. And I want to say thank you for the advocates who were first to this issue, but the colleagues I have behind me. I live 2 miles from here, and I care, and I see everyone behind these walls. But that we've got lawmakers, a public defender, a DA from across the Bay Area who see this for what it is as well. This is encouraging. We can sustain the attention. Let's work further on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Levine, for driving 2 miles. But it doesn't matter, even if you lived in this home right here, that you're here. That's the only thing that matters. Up next, we're going to hear from Senator Scott Wiener.
Thank you, you, Adnan. I'm Scott Wiener. Have the honor of representing San Francisco and northern San Mateo County in the California State Senate. And I was here at San Quentin 9 months ago when we were celebrating Trans Day of Remembrance inside the prison, which had never happened before in a prison. And it was an uplifting day, a day where we could put aside for a moment the trauma that our prison system creates and celebrate the trans people who are throughout our prison system and who are frankly treated horribly. And I did not anticipate at the time that the next time I would be at San Quentin would be for a humanitarian disaster. And that's the only way to describe this. This is a humanitarian disaster that is compounding another humanitarian disaster called mass incarceration. And we need to be very, very clear that what's happening in San Quentin and what may happen and likely will if we don't really change things at other prisons is not just because of COVID-19. It's because the state of California for 40 years now has been completely addicted to incarcerating more and more people for longer and longer sentences, and it doesn't have to be that way. We didn't used to do it this way, and the state survived. It was some of the golden years in California where we built the University of California system and our economy grew, and people were able to thrive in this state. And then we made this terrible decision as a state that we were going to explode our prison populations, and it has torn communities apart. It has torn families apart. It has undermined the fabric of so many communities in this state. It has undermined and destabilized our state budget as we went from fewer than 10 state prisons to more than 30 state prisons, and we didn't become safer as a result, but it drained our budgets for youth UC and CSU and for public education and for basic safety net programs. And we've yet to close a prison. We need to close numerous prisons, and we need to start doing that now. And so when you create a condition where you're just packing people into your prisons, that's bad, period. But it's especially bad when you have a contagion that's killing people. It's not surprising that when you have overcrowded prisons, you're going to have a problem with COVID-19. And I think that there is a perception, which I think is starting to recede, that, oh, that's just prison. That's a separate thing. Well, we know, first of all, the people in that prison are human beings, just like the rest of us, who deserve to be treated like human beings. But we also know that prisons are not hermetically sealed. They're connected to the community. And so what happens in San Quentin or at a nursing home or in a homeless shelter is going to affect the entire rest of the community. And we are all in this together, whether you are incarcerated or not incarcerated. It's up to all of us to stop this pandemic in its tracks. And so we must act decisively. We must significantly reduce prison population. We need to start better testing. They should not be transferring or releasing people without testing them so that we can take protective steps. That is so, so essential. I also just want to close with two things. First of all, I want to thank Janetta Johnson for coming up here and speaking truth about what's happening in the prison with our trans siblings who are not being treated the way they need to be treated. And we're doing some legislative work, SB 132, to try to take one step, but there is so much work to do to support trans people who are incarcerated. But I also just want to say, in addition to CDCR cleaning up its act with what's happening in our prison system, CDCR needs to stop right now, not in an hour, right now, transferring people to ICE detention centers. And we tried to stop that even before COVID. Ash Kalra authored a bill that got vetoed last year to end these transfers. But now with COVID, for CDCR to take people who are being released on parole or otherwise and voluntarily, because they're not required to do it, voluntarily tell ICE this person's going to be released at this date at this time, and so ICE can come and pick them up, and take them to these private prison detention centers where we think 1 out of 3 people is COVID positive. Why on earth would the state of California cooperate with ICE when it doesn't have to transfer people to these unsafe detention facilities? We know that the federal government could care less about the safety of people in immigration detention facilities. We've seen it with the kids in cages at the borders, we've seen it with the families being torn apart, and we're seeing it with COVID. We need to stop immediately cooperating and transferring people to these horrible ICE detention facilities. Let's keep fighting. Thank you.